Welcome to another episode of the Complete Performance Exercise Breakdown video series, where I take different exercises that you're doing at home, that you're doing in the gym, or wherever you train, to help you better understand the technique so that you don't just get best results, but that you stay pain-free, ache-free, and you get stronger. Today I want to cover single arm shoulder presses. Now, a little bit of a broad category, but a few different variations that I will be sure to cover for you today. But a lot of us have shoulder pain. And if we have shoulder pain, shoulder presses are something that we're either going to skip over or we're not going to really see the true benefit of until we make some of these important corrections. So first I want to talk about the value of doing a single arm shoulder press. First and foremost, you build that mind-muscle connection. You really get to, instead of having to focus on two sides of your body, you really get to focus on that one arm. How does this single shoulder feel? This arm feel? And you get to really connect to those muscles in that side. The second, you work on anti-rotation from the core, stability of the core. Because here, if I am pressing from one side, I don't have that other side to counterbalance. So now I really need to think about tightening up through my core, tightening up through my back, stabilizing, so that when I press up, I don't lean back, I don't lean to the side, I'm not wobbling all over the place. Last but not least, two is better than one. So if we build one side, we're going to build both sides. If you're strengthening a singular side, you're going to strengthen that movement when you bring both sides back into play. So we want to strengthen and do unilateral movements so that we can improve and get stronger overall. Let's talk about the technique for a single arm shoulder press. So a couple of different variations. We have the basic single arm shoulder press, standing with feet underneath the hips, nice engaged core, slight bend at the hips and the knee to just stabilize, and pressing straight up overhead. Now arm position does vary based on the individual. You may be comfortable right here. I have years of throwing overhead. This is the best and most comfortable position for my shoulder. It's done a lot of stuff out here. So I like to keep my shoulders in here simply because it's happy, safe, strongest in that position. You may find that it might come out here. What I do find is out here, what that does is that naturally kind of puts us into that hyperextended thoracic position. And a lot of people then begin to use their back through that. Other variations that you can do is a split stance. Split stance forces you to think core a little bit more. Other variation is all the way down to a half kneeling position, really focusing on utilizing that core. So variations come and go. You will find, and you can work with a coach, you can work with me to find the best variation that fits your programming, fits your training program. Now, first common mistake that I see with shoulder presses is what I like to call pushing out of the shoulder. So what happens is people try to push more than they need to. They add a shrug at the top. Now, if I'm showing you from the front, something like this. You're trying to get higher and higher, and more is not better with this. We want to just go until that arm cannot raise anymore. And it may feel like, oh, my arm feels bent at the top. Is that okay? Yes, because it probably isn't. You're really just trying to target those muscles around the shoulder, from that chest and from that back. And we don't need to add any more to that. The second most common mistake that I see with this is pressing the chest and the thoracic, the ribs out. So we go here, and it actually forces us to almost feel like we're pressing that dumbbell back. Well, now what I've done is I've just added a whole load of stress to that low back. Well, if I'm stressing the low back and my back starts to hurt, and I start to associate that with shoulder press, then that's even more reason to skip out on that shoulder press. Last but not least of common mistakes that I see is kind of, it's like a weak wrist, okay? Or it's not engaging in that lower arm as much as we could. So we let that wrist fall and we just kind of press overhead and we kind of wobble from side to side. This is a stability exercise. We want to stabilize the shoulder, we want to stabilize the core, the back, as much as we possibly can. So locking in that wrist and having that good, strong position there is something that we really want to do. Now, let's talk about how to utilize this in training. How do we get the most out of this? How do we train uneven shoulders? Because I don't know about you, but because I have years of throwing overhand, my right arm is stronger than my left. I am right arm dominant. So what do? Well, back to the benefits of doing a single arm shoulder press. 2 is better than 1. If you strengthen one, you strengthen the other. It's cross strengthening. There is research to prove this, and this goes beyond the shoulders. It goes for legs, it goes for core, it goes for the entire body. If I am working this one side, this side is still getting some firing and still getting some work. Now, that doesn't mean that if you are completely healthy that you should skip training this left shoulder, but that does mean that it's still going to work in some capacity. Now, how else do we do this? We have to give adequate rest to that shoulder. We have to make sure that we don't just pump out all the reps on this side and pump out all the reps on this side and go back and forth. If you give yourself 30 seconds of rest in between, you give the shoulder, you give the core, you give your brain a break. So you are more mentally prepared to engage in that motion. So take a rest from side to side. Don't feel like you need to rush right into that next side. Last but not least, and this is a very common thing for a lot of us, when my left arm is weaker, I can do 15 pounds on my right, I can only do 8 pounds on my left. So I should do 15 on my right, and I should do 8 on my left. No. Let your weaker arm dictate the number of reps and the weight that you're going to use. Yes, it may feel easier on your right side, but we're trying to catch them up. We're trying to build that left side, strengthen it. So use the 8 pounds. Get 12 reps on that side. And then do 8 pounds and do 12 reps. Maybe you do 1 or 2 more. That won't hurt you. But what we don't want to do is continue to drive that gap. Okay, I'm going to do 15 on my right, and I'm going to do 8 on my left. That should help. No, it actually continues to further that gap, because as this arm continues to get stronger, this arm continues to get stronger at that same rate. So be sure that you let your weaker side dominate. Last tip for this is something I should have mentioned before, is that do your weaker side first. When you are fresh, when you are ready to go, when you are fully rested, start with your weaker side. Because you're giving more mind-muscle connection power, you're giving more energy resources to using that side. So the single arm shoulder press isn't an exercise that we're going to use as a metric-based lift. We're not going to test how much we can press overhead. But it is an exercise that should be utilized in your programming, because we have to lift things up and down from over our head, and that's an important day-to-day skill, pulling things off of shelves, moving things around. So utilize the single arm shoulder press. And if you don't know where to put it in your training, check out the link included in this video to have a free strategy call, to go through what it looks like to put a single arm shoulder press into your training, to talk about what working with Complete Performance, working with myself looks like, so that you don't get just exercises like the single arm shoulder press, you get other exercises that are going to keep you injury and pain free, and training at your best to reach your goals and to live your longest, healthiest, most sustainable life. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Complete Performance Exercise Breakdown Series. Check out previous episodes and look for those to come.